Hello.
Yes, Nima, thank you so much for that presentation. It was quick, precise, and also quite clear and elaborate.
Thank you.
Next, we shall have Oijuke Karen Precious from the Bishop Stewart University, the Faculty of Law, Uganda. Her abstract is on localizing debates on cooking fuels amid energy transition and climate change dilemmas in East Africa. You're welcome, Precious. Yes.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Oijuke Karen Precious, and I'm a student at Bishop Stewart University pursuing my Bachelor of Laws. And I am very delighted to be here presenting my paper on localizing debates on cooking fuels in East Africa amidst the climate change dilemmas. So, in my research, I'm going to focus on a few things. To begin with, I'll paint a picture of the bigger problem. We have 85% of the Ugandan households relying on biomass fuels, and this is linked to deforestation, indoor air pollution, and the gender labor burden. But more onto that, I'll look at the charcoal and firewood still dominantly being used for cooking. To begin my presentation in detail, globally, the energy sector accounts nearly for 3/4 of greenhouse emissions, and the transition to low carbon alternatives is often framed both as inevitable and urgent. And what this means is there is urgent need to be attached to this sector of energy, because it is one of the things that contribute a lot to the climate change, and for a long time it has been neglected, especially in the global south, because in the global north they had to first face the effects of climate change and all those. For example, I'll give an example of the industrial revolution that happened in the global north. There was a lot of carbon emitted into the air, and this led to rapid climatic changes, which are still being suffered today. And it is absurd that as the global south, we have to carry the burden of those sins that were committed by the global north, and we are lagging behind. As a matter of fact, we look at how countries in the global north push for decarbonization and push for all these renewable energy projects and infrastructure to be implemented in the global south, but they do not consider the on-ground conditions that are in the global south. For example, how we look at energy use in terms of the households, affordability, in terms of can people manage to incorporate these clean energy options that they are giving into their lives without being affected economically, of which the economy of the global south is very important, seeing that most countries are still lagging behind regarding the development. So the region is endowed with, the East African region, zeroing it down, is endowed with abundant renewable energy, potentially which could be used. And I'm going to look at, in Uganda and Ethiopia, we have hydropower energy because of the River Nile, and we can generate electricity because of that. In Kenya, we have geothermal and solar across the Rift Valley, and then wind along the coastal and highland corridors, which are not being put to use. Like, we see that electricity usage in electricity use in Kenya has reached 77%, in Rwanda 75%, in Uganda 58%, and in Tanzania 43%. There are many factors to this, being like the development of some of these countries. I'll give an example for Rwanda. Rwanda is a relatively small country, and they have managed to ensure that there's even distribution of electricity across the country, but then they have not embraced other alternatives because they are comfortable with that. And then in Uganda, we have 58% because we have a high number of people living in the rural areas. Now, I will introduce the leapfrogging theory, which was discussed by Murphy in his paper in 1999, Making the Energy Transition in Rural East Africa. Is leapfrogging an alternative? Now, leapfrogging into modern clean energy systems has generated optimism and skepticism. Why? Because as East Africa, we cannot skip the stage of using fossil fuels into more directly renewable-based energy. Why? Because we have raw fuels, for example, in the Albertine region, that need to be utilized because of the economic benefits they have to the country. And that brings about the debate between leapfrogging and the energy ladder. Now, for the energy ladder, we look at societies developing from using the biomass energy to the transitional energy. For biomass, I'm looking at charcoal and firewood. Then for the transition, we are looking at kerosene and LPG, because there you're using the fossil fuels to generate less carbon emittive energy alternatives. Then we shall move on to electricity and biogas as the cleaner cooking energy alternatives. And what we are saying is, how practical is it? The question is, how practical is it for East Africa to skip the fossil fuel dependent development stage into the renewable-based energy economy without having consequences on the people? Now, we need to look at the economies of the people that are supposed to implement these things. We are looking at the women carrying most of the burden from the use of biomass, as has been discussed by earlier presenters. We see women are the ones who face the consequences, and children, because they are the ones who are mostly into the cooking sector. How do we manage to? That means that the leapfrogging theory is not practical in East Africa. And Murphy cautioned that such transitions are rarely sudden or transformative. And instead, energy change in East Africa is incremental and is shaped by social, cultural, economic, and institutional capacities. And here we are looking at the economic capacities. You're not going to come and tell someone, especially, I'll give an example of homes in middle income earning homes. These people will use, for example, gas for the first part of the month because the money has come and they have filled the gas, but then halfway into the month, the gas is finished, there's no money, and then they'll resort to things like fuel, like cooking oil, like firewood and charcoal. But more importantly, there are people in this country that can afford the clean cooking fuels, but still have a mentality that the biomass fuels are more cost effective. I'll give an example of homes of very rich people that have a lot of people in them. Someone is not going to buy gas to cook for 20 people. No, they are going to have a kitchen outside where they use firewood and charcoal in order to balance the economy of the home, in order to manage to pay for other things. Furthermore, to explain, even for homes that use electricity, you're not going to tell someone to put dry beans on the gas cooker. Like, that will be very unreasonable for most families. And of course, this is where we come in to encourage people to embrace technology, but it is transitional, because you're not going to tell someone that, oh, you have to buy a gas cooker, you have to buy, and you're not giving them alternatives. If you are pushing for gas, you need to also provide an alternative, because at the point where we are, we can't push for gas fully to be used in homes because it would not be sufficient. And again, as Murphy stated, the transition has to be transformative and incremental. And this transition is only based on how the families are developing. If the incomes of the families increase, then they are going to move on to adopt better cleaning fuels because they can afford them. And that brings me to the women carrying the burden, which is the gender-based, the gender inequalities as regards this whole topic. And we are going to look at how do we empower the women, because right now the status quo is these women are the ones going to the forest to collect the firewood. These women are the ones being in the smoke to cook. And it is absurd because this is not only affecting the women's livelihoods, but also their children, because according to the World Health Report of 2021, over 13,000 deaths are attributed to indoor pollution, which is caused mostly by using these biomass fuels, because most homes, again, are not built to with enough ventilation to protect these people from the effects of these fuels. So we need to empower the women and the children and the youths as they grow and equip them with skills in order to help them embrace this transformative change that we want to see in the energy sector. Now, I'll move on to households that use multiple fuels, and that is called layering, whereby you find a household has a charcoal stove. They use charcoal, they use firewood, but they also use gas and electricity, which is very common in most of our homes. You'll find that a family has a gas cooker, an electric cooker that can also work as a gas cooker, but at the same time they have like 10 charcoal stoves, and they also have a fireplace somewhere outside. I think also it comes back to changing the mentalities of the public, because again, from time immemorial, all the changes that we have seen happen from the grassroots. Like, it's not a matter of pushing for change, it's about pushing for the change of mindsets of the people that are going to implement these policies, because we can put all these organizations on ground, we can release the funds to do all these things, but as long as the mentalities of people have not changed, again, I'll go ahead to give an example of the person who was representing the Danish Royal Commission, and he said that he still wants to eat luombo at the end of the day, which takes 4 hours to cook. But we are at a point whereby technology has advanced, and some of these things can be replicated, and you do not necessarily have to use firewood per se or charcoal to create these cuisines. You can as well put the banana leaves in the pressure cooker or something and have the same flavor. Like, we need to change our mindset in order to see these changes happen. Now we are going to look at Noel Phillips described the energy trilemma as balancing access, growth, and climate sustainability. Now we look at how accessible are these alternatives we are providing to the community we are providing them to.
You have 2 minutes.
Yes, please. And also, are these alternatives we are providing to the community going to be able to promote growth in the community and not just achieving the aims of the organizations and the international perspective? So how do we make transitioning into clean cooking fuels profitable for even the people that are on ground? So the Murphy's 1999 critique of leapfrogging remains highly relevant, and it asserts that energy transitions in rural East Africa are incremental and not revolutionary, mainly because they are constrained by absorptive capacity of households and institutions. Unless these households and institutions on the ground are willing to absorb these clean cooking fuels into their daily lives, it will be very hard for us to achieve some of these clean energy goals that we have. Now, moving on to the
The last minute.
Yes, moving on to the discussion on The international donors and policymakers promote rapid shifts on renewable energy, but the realities show incremental transition characterized by fuel stacking and adoptive new technologies. And we need to use this to our advantage in order to have people embrace some of these policies that we want to see implemented. Thank you very much.
Yes, thank you so much, Precious, for the presentation.